Welcome to season 2 of Your Tru Awakening podcast for creators and leaders who are done performing and are ready to live what they know. I'm Sandra Tru, and as you know, this season is all about one thing, moving from awareness into embodiment, because insight isn't the problem. Most people already know what's true, they're just not living it. So each week we go deeper into the patterns, the nervous system, the truth beneath the surface, and what it actually takes to create a life that feels like you. And I'm so excited today because today my guest is someone who beautifully bridges the worlds of strategy and creativity and human connection. And Dave Ross has spent decades advising CEOs and serving on corporate boards and leading growth and strategy and initiatives and becoming one of the most respected voices in transportation and logistics. He is a former chief of strategy officer, trusted advisor, investor, philanthropist, author of Beyond Logistics, and host of the Hanley Dinners, which are amazing community gatherings where he brings remarkable people for meaningful connections and conversations. And I have loved those dinners. And what inspires me most about Dave is his devotion to his creative life. As a painter, a writer, a connector, and a curator, he is essentially embodies the idea that success and artistry are not separate paths, but expressions of the same human journey. And so I'm excited about this because today my intention is to explore embodiment and creativity and purpose and what it means to consciously create a life that feels as beautiful on the inside as perhaps it appears on the outside. So Dave is also my partner in the Art of Being Human salons, which have been so inspiring and touching as we gather people from different walks of life to explore how life truly is the ultimate canvas. And so today, Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sandra. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So Dave, you've achieved many things that a lot of people in their lives perhaps are still pursuing. Was there a moment in your life when you realized that perhaps the chase and the hunt for achievement wasn't the same thing as feeling fully alive?
Yes, I would say it's happened multiple times at different stages. Even if I didn't have a word for it, I always knew that there was something else or something different. Or, when I was feeling stuck in a job or wasn't growing in a job, more specifically, I would look for things outside of that to make me come alive. And really back in 2010, it started with volunteering and getting involved with nonprofits when I was in Baltimore, focused on youth education and learning that whole system and helping some of those organizations gave me an aliveness that I no longer had at work. And, you know, through the years, even that, kind of started to run its course. And, there was a sense that something was missing. And it's that, I would say, difference between the external image and the internal feeling where, by third party accounts, other people, if you had asked them 10, 15 years ago, about my life, they'd say, looks very good, good job, good family, lots of friends, involved in the community, seems happy. But on the inside, I knew that there was more. And I kind of would say to myself from time to time, is this it? Because, people have over-indexed career success and financial comfort for success, full stop. And, success or a successful life is closer to what you mentioned in terms of feeling alive or getting in touch with that vitality, the whole time. And part of that is growing, part of that is giving. And I looked at where I was over 10 years ago. In theory, I could have just kept doing that for 20, 30 years. And the external world would have thought that that was a successful life or a life well lived. But internally, I knew there was something more. And that ultimately led me to Miami. I moved down here over 10 years ago, where I didn't know anybody at the time and had to really start over. And that, has taken many twists and turns, but ultimately led to, growth in new passions, learning new things, building new communities.
Mhm.
And connecting in a different way. So it's been fun and it continues.
It continues. Our culture is forever selling us this whole idea that success is just collect more, accumulate more, and just put yourself on top of a high-rise building when you're not connected to anyone, and you are fully independent, and you have everybody that does things for you, and like this idea, there's something really sexy about it, because like luxury is so sexy. As I grow in my own path, I also realize, especially because I get to work with a lot of people that have gotten to a place where money is no longer their necessity, but there is this identity that they don't recognize themselves of the person they have been, and they're also know that there's something missing, like that's not really what's next. That question that you asked was so powerful, and what I've realized from my own journey is that what I feel freedom, what I feel success is being really well connected. And so I love that this is something that you found, like it's in being in really good relationship with other people, that I get my aliveness, of being in really good relationship with the earth, with my body. Like that's how I get my aliveness. And so much of that is honoring the desires, right? And living those out, the embodiment, the part of like putting those little whispers of the soul into living it out, right? Like what does embodiment mean to you?
Embodiment means presence. Embodiment means, you're living fully here now in your body, moving through space, action, whatever you're into. The other way I would describe embodiment is, after your thoughts, if you kind of wade through them, not all of which are your own, most of which are not your own, and you decide which thoughts you like, how do you translate that into action? How do you, embody what you say you want to do, where you want to go, so that you ultimately get to the vision that you have in your head.
To talk. So how do you know when, so how would you say, like we were speaking about this on our last event, like moving from the heart versus the head, right? It was such a beautiful conversation on our last salon, and we were exploring like moving from the head and what happens when we live from the conditioning, which most of it has been inherited by our culture, versus being able to really tap into what's in your heart, in your whole being. How do you know when someone, how would you tell someone like the difference between someone that's living from their head versus when someone's living from heart?
Well, you can usually sense it if you're talking to somebody who's living it that way. It's hard to describe. And then in terms of giving somebody instruction on if they feel they're too much in their head, how to act differently or how to make a decision, based on heart over intellect, that's a really hard one. That's one that, I spent a lot of years, trying to figure out. And of course, I try to figure out in my head, which is,
The loop.
which is specifically the problem. And I had to get to it ultimately, I think, through a lot of somatic work, specifically around breath work, and meditation, and just trying to pay attention to feeling your heart, which is much harder than you think. It's there, it's working even when you're not conscious of it, but actually trying to feel it for some people. I mean, some people it may come easier than other people, but folks like me who've been stuck in their head for a long, long time, it takes some work. And once you get there, you feel the sensation, the difference. And also it helps carry you through the world in a different way where, the outer world begins to shape around you in a form that is inherently beneficial to you. And it's hard to describe, but, just moving from a place, when you can feel your heart, you move lighter.
Yeah.
You're more present, and a lot of the chatter and analyzing and, the old paralysis of analysis kind of goes away. Now, easier said than done, and it's not something that you change and now you're just moving that way forever. You may
Okay.
have to reset every day, but I found that practices like breath work and meditation can get you there.
Totally. And I would even add anything that's getting your body moving, right? Like you're a painter. I'm sure that had a huge influence, especially like since you moved to Miami, diving in and reclaiming the artist, right? So much of the work that when people come to me, they end up taking a creative form, not necessarily for the desire of making it their work, simply because they start to experience how helpful it is to break their patterns and have a place of exploring presence, like have a way to explore presence and to activate their way of sensing what it is, like giving permission to themselves to explore things that they didn't think was productive. Right? And so when you start to realize that creating space to listen to those little whispers, to value the things that are not necessarily done for an outcome, but they're done because there is a beauty involved, and there is almost a celebration of our existence to do something creative. It's like planting a flag on life and saying, I have the right to exist. And when people dance, or when people start to paint, or when they start to activate the things that perhaps they knew that brought them alive when they were little, but then the conditioning, that's not going to give you good grades, or that's not going to make you money, or the whole thing of how it was unfortunately taking out of their concept of what success was. When they start to reclaim that, all of a sudden their work starts to do better, their relationships are better, because activating the artist in us naturally relaxes the nervous system. Like, it actually opens up our conduits in the body. Right? And it's so beautiful to see people literally become physically more beautiful because there's more life inside of them. There's more presence. There's more discernment and boundary and choice, because art is like the exploration of choice. Right? And so you've played so many roles in your life, and one of the things that I really have admired so much in you has been this reclamation of the artist, meaning like you're the only artist in your family. And I've told you this so many times of how beautiful it is, from being someone that was for so many years identified as a very intelligent, smart person, structural, a way to actually living the way that you're living now. And how much meaning did that have in your life, the reclaiming of the artist in you?
Uh, Well, I think it goes back to, the purpose of life is to continue to discover who you are. And I feel like we come into this world and essentially we get, shrink wrapped or duct taped or put in a straitjacket, from the time of birth until we were, 5, 6, 15, 20 years old, whatever. And, we don't know that that's not us at first. And it goes back to your awakening awareness concept. At some point you have to realize, oh, like this isn't mine, or why is my arm not free? And you do the work to unravel the programming or conditioning or whatever is there that, just never resonate. You wonder why you're out of alignment. You wonder why you're getting injured. You wonder why you're sick. You wonder why something is missing, even though you can't accurately describe it or put a finger on it. And then you start to unwind that and do the internal work. And it's a process. And I do not think it ends. And I think every year you can discover more about yourself. The answer I give now when people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you want to do long term? Is like, I just want to become more me, whatever that means. And,
Same.
expressing the, artist side, using the right hemisphere in addition to the left hemisphere of the brain, using the heart in addition to the head, becoming more fully embodied, is all part of that process. And I think whether you're talking about aliveness, presence, focus, flow, they're all pretty much the same thing. And when you paint, when you write, when you dance, you're just not thinking about what you've got to do on Friday or what happened yesterday. And that allows you, even if you're not conscious of it or you're not paying attention to your heartbeat at the moment, you are more embodied, you are more yourself.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, right? It's like the more that we bring the background, because we're exploring presence, like we're bringing the background, kind of like take main stage, and we're letting go of the I have to get it right part of our brain that is just like has to do perfection, and it has this crazy idea of having to do perfect or not do it at all. And the play that is involved in creativity and art is what children are doing, right? You said something so beautiful at the last event, which was, I feel like we're now finishing the cycle of what our child couldn't do. It's like we're now doing it. Right? And I think that's so true. What has painting awakened in you that the conditioned idea of success couldn't?
So just the process itself and the way I paint too, it's not like this for everybody, but this is just my experience. For me, it is freeing, it's expressive, it's playful. I paint big. I move a lot when I paint. I splatter paint, I throw paint, I use various tools. And that process of, I guess the combination of being free and playing and trying to make something good
Mhm.
at first butted up against the is it good enough or is it perfect or how does this look part. And I think one of the reasons I gravitated towards abstract was because there's less, at least judgment through the process. Like if
Mhm.
I'm trying to paint, my dog laying under a shady tree with sunglasses on, I have a specific image in my
Hello.
head. Or if I'm trying to paint off of a photo, I'm trying
Uh-huh.
to match up all along the way in real time. And if I'm not exactly like that photograph looks or the picture in my head looks, I'm angry at myself. I'm beating myself. Like, I'm ruining it. I'm messing up. Whereas in abstract, because I don't know where any of these pieces are going when I start, I'm freer to go in different directions because I'm not trying to map onto a preconceived notion of success. Yeah, right. And you can compare
Yeah.
that to life too, right? If what I do next week, it's more important that I have fun doing it and I think it's good. It doesn't have to map onto what somebody else thinks is the template for success over a long term period of time. And in the process as well, sometimes I'll get to parts of the painting I think I really like, or I'll get to a stage where I like what I've done. I like the painting as it is, and I'm nervous that if I make another mark, it's going to ruin it. But if it doesn't ruin it, it may make it better. And
Mhm.
so at first was very upset if I made that mark and it ruined it. Through years of practice, I've come to understand, again, much like life, there's always different directions you can go where it ends up better than you even thought. So many, many times that painting that I thought I ruined after a few more weeks or months of work ended up in a better place than the place I was that I was trying to hold on to. And so
Mhm.
that's also been freeing and fun and really helped the process too, because when you're less afraid of making a mistake, you just move faster.
Mhm. How I love just how all of that process of being able to move without the attachment to the outcome is such a perfect metaphor. And this is one of the reasons why we have this salon, because we've been having this conversation before we started the salon. It's like it's such a perfect metaphor. Then when you can create without the attachment or the expectation of what it has to be, there's so much freedom. And so the process is the gift, not the finished product. And if we could learn to live life as the process is the arrival, not the you getting there, not once I'm there, then I will, but it's in the stepping, right? It is in each moment that I can allow myself to just I want to share with people something that I shared on the last experience in the last salon we had, which is that I asked you, I said, Dave, if I'm to paint, because I was painting at your studio, I have like so many choices. How do you decide? How do you start? And you just said you just throw the paint. And I thought, wow, that's such a perfect way to and perfect, right? Like there is my language, my conditioned language. Such a freeing way of leading our lives that, and you said you just throw the paint and you just work with what you get. And I thought that is just such a beautiful way of learning to live life. It's like so much of the paralysis that we get is from trying to make the right choice. And when you're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, there can't possibly be a wrong or right choice. Everything is just a path and everything is just another avenue. Like you're going to get to wherever you need to get to. And our job is not to be try to get it right. Our job is to be fully alive while we're doing it, to be fully here, present, loving, devoted to however you connect more to this moment. And so you keep bringing these metaphors of art, and I keep kind of reflecting back on how I experience life. One of the reasons why we started these salons because we just kept going and we kept going from going on this really cool adventure to Bhutan, and maybe we can get into it now. And it was so much fun that I went to one of your Hanley dinners, and one of our friends connected us, and I was like so like I loved it so much to be able to connect to people without like, what do you do? And like, which is such a boring conversation for someone like me. How's the weather? It's like I mean, I like to go deep into deep dive, and that's how we run our salons, and that's how you started the handmade dinners. Also, just like let's meet as humans, and then let's leave the identities kind of like outside of the door. And we ended up going to Bhutan because we had it was just so strange. You want to share a little bit of that story?
Yeah, and I just happened to be reading the book called The Signs by Tara Swart at the time, which is about how the universe does or and can talk to you. And so, essentially, I was just out trying to grab lunch and driving around, not knowing where to go. Went to my favorite spots for whatever reason. There were no parking places available, so I just kept driving and realized I saw a place that I'd never been to before last week or the prior week, and so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go there. And I had my book, and I was going to sit and have a nice quiet lunch by myself, and then go back to the studio. And then as I'm walking in, I bump into Sandra, and she's like, "Hey, you should come join me and my friend Andrea. We're grabbing lunch." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So that's fun. Then she says, "We're going to Bhutan in a few weeks. You
Yeah,
should
like
come."
in a few
I'm like,
days.
I was like, "Where's Bhutan?" I don't think I'd heard that word in over a decade, if if ever, and so I didn't think anything of it. And then I went, hung out with some friends that evening, and then that night I had an intro call over Zoom with a gentleman who just joined a global WhatsApp group I'm involved with, and he's based in Taiwan. And so I started chatting with him, and he says, "A good thing you caught me tonight because I fly out tomorrow. I'm going to be in Morocco and Bhutan the next few weeks." It's like, what is up with Bhutan? That's the second time I've heard Bhutan today. And he's like, "Well, is your friend going for the up games?" I said, "Sounds familiar, maybe. I don't know." And he said, "What's your friend's name?" And I said, "Sandra." He goes, "Well, actually," then he just texted me a photo of her. He's like, "We're working on a project together. You should definitely come." And so, that got the wheels turning that maybe this isn't what they call coincidence. And Sandra introduced me to Lucian, the founder, and we hit it off immediately at a nice 30-minute intro call. And then I just looked at the calendar and said, "Oh, I'm already committed to be at a conference in Nashville in 2 weeks. I don't have a visa to Bhutan, a flight, anything. I have to get a visa to India as well." But I said, "Well, let's just see." And things started to fall into place. 2 weeks later, I'm looking up at Tiger's Nest, in Bhutan, and it ended up being a wonderful, wonderful trip.
Yeah. Doing heights. Look at you doing heights. It's like at some point I see him just going through these hikes and then he's just like we're like high. I'm talking about it's like look up Tiger's Nest. It's very, very high. And the views are like, they take your breath away and it could freak you out. If you have had any resistance to heights, like that could freak you out. And Dave at some moment is just like breathing deeply. And I see that he's struggling with breath, like to keep walking. And he just kept going. And I was like so proud of him. I was like, "Dave, we're doing this." And he courageously kept going. And it was so funny because then we're hiking up the Himalayas. We're like going to this festival of is it Elia?
In Laya, the Highlands
Elia.
Festival, the Royal Highlands Festival in Laya.
To Royal Highlands, the highest festival in the world, and we're hiking up, and I'm like, I have no breath in my lungs. I've had sometimes the weather or allergies, it makes my lungs feel super contracted, like I have a lot of weight on my chest, and I can't breathe. And David's there like, "Sandra, you got this." I'm like thinking about, "Well, I need my inhaler. My inhaler is on a sack of a horse that is like taking all of our stuff up." And it's just like the beauty of like having you there. 'Cause you're like, "No, Sandra, we're going." And like the support of knowing like how beautiful it is to be living in good relationship, to have good allyship and how that felt like, oh my God, this is so, so perfect that sometimes we remember that we're not here alone and we can give a hand to someone and how beautiful it is to receive a hand, right? To be in good relationship. And I think both of us have that in common that we just love bringing people together and love creating good partnerships and just making people feel like family and like home. And we keep curating these experiences and they have been so beautiful. We had so much to talk about of art and creativity and spirituality and all these has and so many similarities in the things that we've studied and that really support us in this beautiful way of walking through life, right? That helps us move with less effort, truly. And so in that when you think about Bhutan, is there a moment that kind of reminds you what happens when you create space to do the things that you love? Because it could have been like you didn't have time, or like, yeah, it could have been something, but what happens when you allow yourself to create things that perhaps you don't know you love, but you're feeling a yes in your body? What did that give to you?
Well, it opened up, new friendships, new experiences, and part of the magic of the trip was not having any idea what was going to happen day to day, but just being very grateful that you're in this amazing place with not a lot of people around, pristine nature, you
Pristine,
know, that,
pristine nature. Oh my
that
God.
one day you're kind of talking to monks 14,000 feet up in this, very remote monastery built into the side of the top of a mountain. The other, it's basically like you reserve the river to yourself, and
Water
you're,
rafting through
you're,
the
you're
Himalayas.
and you're just jumping off of a cliff and having amazing meals and doing an open mic night by the fire. Just very, very, very cool because there was no expectation around this is what we have to do today. This is what we're going to do today. It was, let's see where the day goes.
Yeah, and I really love how the up games are structured, which is to give everybody the leadership to create, right? And to create experiences for one another. So I really love, had so much fun with that community and meeting so many amazing people. I'm meeting you. Oh my goodness, like really meeting you because we've met before, but just having so much time to slow down as we're moving fast. I know that for me, when I think about the mountains is like, wow, there's so much beauty that can pull when we do create space, right? Like finding something that just I remember being on top of this of the Himalayas and we were at the festival and there's like this procession of yaks in their outfits, right? And they're wearing their amazing colors and their outfits and it's like 150 of them going through the most dramatic mountains I have ever seen in my life, and I've traveled quite a bit, and even just driving up was insane. And I'm just seeing this gorgeousness, and I just start weeping because I've had the desire to get to the Himalayas for, like, years, but I forgot it because I went through so many turns and challenges and life being alive, and I forgot the calling, but in, like, a few weeks, I just ended up there. And it was so beautiful to feel that sometimes we forget the deep desires that we have, but there's a greater order that if we just keep surrendering, will find us, will take us to where we need to go. I had one of my friends yesterday tell me because I was asking him about these upcoming trips. And he's like, you taught me this a year ago, which was that the river always knows how to move towards the ocean, just getting the current. He's like, just getting the current. And I think that living artfully might not always feel like the safest way. And also, it is the way that can perhaps bring presence, joy, a life in alignment. That it's not about what's the promise, what's the safest thing that I'm always going to get, but what is true. What is true to me, moment to moment? What is true to me? What feels like a whole yes in my body? And I think one of the reasons why I really admire you is because one of the things that I witness, it's not that common, is to find artists that are very grounded or to find very grounded people that are in their artistry of being human. And I really love finding the people that are living in both, right? And I like to be a very grounded person, and it's been work to get grounded, to create good structures for my life. It's not natural. And so just seeing that your path has been the opposite. You started with a lot of structure and then reclaim your artist, where for me it's been the opposite. I've been an artist my whole life in so many different ways. I still am very much an artist of life, like yourself. But it's like now this season of my life has been all about building structures, really doing the embodiment. Like, how do I get those big ideas down into the living of them? And so I love this, right? One of the reasons why I love so much our salons is because they feel a little bit like an antidote to modern life, which is saying just focus on the structure and just like productivity, and like your worth is how much you produce, period. What has it been inspiring for you about these salons and the conversations we've been having?
Well, it's just getting people to think differently, and that, your worth is, not tied to somebody else's idea. Your
Mhm.
worth is, really ultimately self-generated. And people don't know what they don't know. I mean, I don't know what I don't know. One of the benefits, in my life has been travel. I was encouraged early on by my parents, to travel as much as possible. And I think I've been now to 47 out of the 50 states in the US. I've been to about 40 countries on 6 continents and had a lot of interesting conversations with people that, do not think the same way I do, or do not have the same information I have. And to me, that's all additive. That's all seeing other perspectives, seeing other models, seeing other ways of doing things. And I think, as an artist of our own lives, it's okay to copy parts of what other people do or model certain things, but we're also multidimensional and ever changing, that it's up to you to kind of have your own recipe put together. You can, take
Mhm.
certain ingredients, from here and there, and, certain process here and there. But, really the goal is, how do you make it yours? And how do you make yours different than anybody else's? And, that's okay. And other people not doing it your way is also okay.
Mhm.
And what I've found through the salons and, the Henley dinners and other things that we've done is, people have way more in common with each other than they think, because they are, looking through one lens or another lens, or, prejudging something, and the conversation, the listening to people, the sharing without feeling of judgment allows you
Mhm.
to connect deeper and, not only, feel heard and understood by other people, but they can then also understand you, and
Mhm.
they can connect to you in a different way, make your life easier. You can make their life easier, and ultimately, everybody just has fun. I just think that, one of the other goals is fun. You mentioned play. You talk about joy a lot. I think if you're not having fun, like, you're not doing something right.
Yeah, I think joy is like or naturalness. And if you're having a hard time accessing it, it's perhaps a good time to start to explore how aligned you are with the things that are a full yes in your life, right? And so much of like what we are exploring in these salons is almost that. Like what's feeling like a yes, what's feeling like a oh, okay, I'm moving away from that. And like the beauty of seeing people soften so much because they feel fully heard. Not, and yes, somebody else is hearing them, but they feel like they hear themselves at a different way because of the structure of these gatherings. And that has been really beautiful. What do you think people are hungry for right now, like as a culture?
Well, but before that, I'm going to add on one other thing that you do at the salons that I really like, that is helpful for people, which is, when we break up in partners, you meet somebody new and you talk uninterrupted for 7 minutes, because that that is something where, people are forced to get beyond, what the answer they're typically used to giving in a situation, uh, and force them to think at another level, and then another level, and then another level. And it's
Mhm.
it's it's kind of, for them, it's always an instance of self-discovery. The last 2 minutes of that 7-minute monologue is maybe something that they've never articulated to anyone else before. Maybe it's something they've never even said out
Mhm.
loud or thought. But it's
Mhm.
probably the truest of the 7 minutes,
Yeah.
for when they were talking. And so
Mhm.
that's always fun. And I think people get a lot out of it, even though it's not easy. And folks get stuck in the middle and they say that they're out, but then they keep going. And when they keep going, that's where the gold is.
Uh-huh.
So what,
Yeah,
what,
so
what was your
much
question
gold.
before that? I just had to make a
But I
comment on that
think
real
you
quick.
answered it.
Okay.
My question was like, what do you think people are hungry for in culture? And I think that what you're answering is truth. Where I really feel like what I'm witnessing is like the return of truth to access it for yourself, to access it for yourself. And so much of like what we're exploring in a certain way is exploring how do we access our own truth in living creatively. And so much of that is like we are taught to be busy and we see busy as like a model of something to admire. And truth can't be accessed if you are 10 steps into the future. That our truth drops in being in good relationship with this moment that includes both the future and the past and being right here and being able to sense it and live it. And so much of the experiences that I create, that's really my intent to explore the in between place, which is the now, right? To explore it fully. And so we it's very beautiful to do on your own. And because of so much of how the artist has been shamed through culture. I feel that these experiences are allowing people to reclaim it more, and perhaps a way to how do they go home and do that on their own and to keep accessing space so that they can find their own truth, their own connection to their own artistry and voice that perhaps is very different from what they think they want.
Yeah, and a lot of the power, well, all the power is inside out. You could use outside in as a reflection or a guidepost or for part of the conversation. But you mentioned busyness and busyness sometimes is an excuse not to think or not to reflect. Busyness can also be responding to everybody else's calendars and not setting your own. And yeah, there's been this just massive competition for attention, with social media, because attention is really, how we stay present and ultimately how we create. There's a lot of talk right now about AI, which I am not interested in at all. I actually think that the better AI is the human technology of attention and intention. Uh,
Mhm.
that your own human AI, your attention, supported by your intention, is what creates everything,
Mhm.
it's what's going to make your life better, your world better, the people around you better. It's not out there. It's in you, and so it's not, again, easier said than done. But once you're aware, you can start that work.
And the opposite of that is tension. So if you find yourself tensing up in tension, you're probably not like really good in like what's the intention right now? Where's my attention right now? And so find the way in, right? What do you think is something that people and we right like we were touching on these in the experiences, but what do you observe is happening while we gather intentionally, because there's so much intention in these gatherings? What is happening between strangers when they meet? And can you speak a little bit of perhaps like what we're witnessing, that people are like, that was crazy, like we were having the same thing? What do you think is happening there when strangers are meeting themselves and intentionally in that way?
I think to a degree, life is shown to you through mirrors and reflections. And if you're currently there and are aware, you can see something that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And the people that come and they're fully present when they break off and they talk to somebody else and they discover, oh my gosh, this person's just going through exactly what I'm going through. I don't think that's an accident. In other groups that I'm involved with, other meetings I've been to, events, it always seems that whoever I get paired up with, we're just going through the same thing at that same time. I think that's more of a universal orchestration type deal. I don't think it's an accident or, oh my God, what a coincidence. I think that, the people that are present are going to get what they need. And a lot of it is just that idea reflected back to them that they're not alone, because these people walk into a room and they see people that are dressed differently, that are different age, maybe from a different neighborhood or from a different country, different religion, speak a different language. And your brain goes to, not my person, nothing in common with them. But when you sit down and you spend time with the other person and you are fully present, you're not trying to get out of the room or distracted, and you connect with them, you realize that I don't know what this was going into it, where I thought that we had nothing in common and that I wasn't going to like this person, whatever. You get to the other side and you have a great experience because you're actually connected. And so, setting that container is really, really important because it sets everybody up for success.
That's it. Intention, curating space with intention, giving ourselves full attention, giving others like to be generous with our energy in the spaces that we want to be in is so important. So we in these containers are essentially exploring how life is the ultimate the ultimate canvas, right? Like the ultimate work of art. What are you creating that's really exciting right now?
So I'm creating new works. I'm creating new connections. I'm creating a new way of living, or basically continue to evolve what I'm doing day to day, week to week, year to year, to show up in a way that feels right or feels
Mhm.
light, feels free. In the studio, it's experimenting with new colors. It's playing with, bigger works. It's getting back to the writing and putting ideas together in ways that I might not have seen before, and testing those out. Is this actually what I believe, or is it not what I believe? In really crafting my own custom, basically the own art. Whether it's the painting or the writing, in the same way that that you do your life. Like, do you
Mhm.
have to live this way? Do you have to, work these hours? Do you have to eat this way? Do you have to, have your home set up a certain way? Do you have to sleep a certain time? And I've always found that trial and error is a really good way to do that, because what works for
Yeah.
Sandra might not work for Dave.
Yeah.
And what works for
Which
Marley might not work for Henley.
and those are our dogs. What I love so much about what you're saying is that essentially this culture has indoctrinated society to be crazy about the answers. You just need to know. You just need to know. And what you're saying, which I think I just want to highlight because I think is so, so important, that I believe that we create lives that are truly unique to us when we focus on the questions. Like, what are the questions that we're asking? What are we questioning? We can't, I think of the great geniuses of our time, like with the most of the biggest genius, right? Like if you think about people who are the, finding things out in physics, it's not that they created it, it was already in nature, but they started to question it, right? They like, what's gravity? Newtonian physics, right? Like that falls, and Newton was there like, oh, maybe like that falls, there's a weight, start to question things. And so we can't break out of a conditioned pattern unless we have a good question, unless we're figuring out like what's the better question. That has been very big for me this year because there were parts of me that were still in protection, right? Like still figuring out how do I protect myself in different ways. And that is a tension, right? Not a tension, is a way of having tension in your body. And if you're in protection, you're not allowing, and it's so subtle, but I'm glad that with the work that I do, I was able to caught it like, to catch it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm protecting from something." And I just started questioning, like, what's the better question? What's the better question? If instead of like, what's gonna happen, or is this gonna work? Is what's a better question? Because that has been the trained, inherited worry, essentially lineage and culture. If we can start to have better questions, we are allowing wonder and curiosity and possibility, and we started to put ourselves in different points of view, which is what an artist does. It's like when you're creating art, you're allowing your point of view to change, and that's when you're dancing and you're allowing these waves or patterns in your body to be broken or to be explored, or you're putting yourself in different perspectives, whether you are doing it intentionally or it's just moving through you, you're experiencing in a new way. And so I wanted to highlight that because I think that's a great takeaway for people, right?
Well, and I think it's, also important to talk about paradox, and the reason that you need to look at different perspectives and try different things from different ways is, we're all going through our own process, at different times, on many different levels. And so the right answer for you today might not have been the right answer 5 years ago, and it might not be the right answer in 5 years from now. It actually might be the opposite. So we do need some safety. We do need some certainty in order to be free. And
Mm-hmm.
we also, need to feel free as well. And it's not an either or. It's not that I always, feel, certain about everything, or you also don't want to never know anything. What's
Mm-hmm.
the balance of those
The
tensions,
balance.
the paradox. My friend John Price, would say that if it's not a paradox, it's not true.
I love
And
John, by the way. I chatted with him. We had
he,
such
he-
a good conversation. I want to
he's
try
the
to get him
best.
on here.
He's the best.
S So great. And yes, and to that, like there are, and also, by the way, paradox is the thing that it gets you into joy, right? Because when you understand that two seeming opposite realities can coexist at once, you can't help but laugh. Like, right? Like that's the finding of a paradox, is the finding of lightness. Because it's just like, here I am, how cute. It's like, yes, and so I agree with you. And then and it's also like balance is a paradox because it's like, do we ever actually find it, right? Do we ever are actually in perfect balance? I don't know. I know for sure that I'm always in the process of finding balance and getting into greater and greater harmony, and life is alive, and it's a beautiful thing to move towards, and yet life is paradoxical in that nature. So it's like, how can we dance in that, right? I keep
yeah, I
bringing
mean,
out dance. I feel very dancey today.
Oh, it's good. I mean, I think one of the most profound symbols of all time is a yin yang symbol. And,
Hmm.
it's that representation of paradox plus, that middle way, that middle path going through
Yeah.
the center of it, which is not a
Hmm.
straight line. And,
Hmm.
some people say part of the path is losing the path. And if you
Hmm.
think about, you can have that as a goal as to living the Tao or always being present, but you're not going to be, so
Hmm.
the question is, all right, I fall to the right. How do I get back up and, keep walking on the balance beam? Oh, I fell off to the left. Okay. Realizing that you fell off and then, get back on, try to walk and you might get pushed off again, blown off by the wind, whatever it is. But, that's it. And, about laughing, you mentioned laughing at paradox or finding joy in the paradox. It's, if something goes the way you thought it was going to go, you're thrilled, you're happy about it. Like, yes, this is amazing. This is the perfect day. This is exactly as I had planned. But then when you live and you realize that sometimes it doesn't go your way, but you can control how you react to that. Because you can
Yeah.
say, well, all right, I guess there's a different plan. Let's go with this. Let's just see where this goes. And that's why I don't get upset anymore when meetings get canceled or somebody doesn't show up for something last minute. It's, well, I wasn't supposed to have this meeting right now. Like,
Yep.
can we reschedule? I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. Cool. Like, I'm just going to do something else now, and we'll find the right time to talk.
Yeah, yeah. It's like saying yes to whatever life is giving us. So much of the tension that we carry is because we're in resistance to what is being delivered, to what is being here, with the attachment to the outcome again, right? Like I wanted this, and unless I have it in this. So many people are like, but I was visualizing, and I didn't get it. I was doing the meditation because I wanted that thing, and I didn't get it. I'm like, well, you're spending a lot of energy, visuals. Maybe perhaps the idea is not to try to get it perfectly, but to getting to a feeling state that you want, that you prefer, right? Getting to a feeling state that you prefer versus trying to get what you want and do the practices you think you should be doing because they're gonna give you an outcome, because that's still like manipulating, moving through life conditionally versus allowing yourself to live more of how you want to feel. Right? And it's just like if I'm getting worked up over something not being the way that I wanted it, or I could just say, well, maybe it's time to go to the beach or go explore some new coffee shop, and maybe, I will find someone that would invite me to Bhutan because the other ones were just like saying yes to life. That has been like such a perfect teaching for me. Perfect. Here I go again. Such a great, enjoyable teachings for me, that the saying of yes to life. The saying of yes to life, like receiving it fully with what's coming, and allowing myself to be in the current of life just it keeps coming back with gifts, right? And I'm not attached. So then we sometimes, as I'm in conversation often with people are confusing outcome with purpose. The ideal outcome, meaning like once like that is the purpose out there. And so if outcome is not the purpose, what does it mean to create a life on purpose?
You can have aims and that could help create your life on purpose,
Mm.
but you shouldn't wait to be happy until you get there. Because I think that's some of the idea. It's, oh, well, I'll just shoot for this. I'm going to be miserable. And then in a few years, I'll be happy. And that's just, one, it's just factually not true. You you could be happy any day. Um, Bad things go on. So it might put you on pause. You'll go through some emotions, let them cycle through. But at the end of the day, you get to start again tomorrow. One of
Okay.
the concepts I've been thinking a lot about the past year is the one day, one life concept.
Same.
And it's amazing how you can have a shitty day and nothing goes the way you thought it was going to go. And you're angry, you're frustrated, you're sad, you're tired, whatever it might be. You go to bed at 11 p.m., you wake up the next morning, magically, you don't feel the same as you went to bed. There's a
Mm.
different lightness, there's a different perspective, and it might only be for a few seconds because maybe all this stuff comes pouring back in, and but you have a chance at the beginning to think about things differently, and then move through that day in a way that is more constructive. And sometimes that takes a while to get there. I know sometimes in the
Mhm.
mornings it takes me a while to get to that state before going out in the house and meeting the world. It's not that you just open your eyes and jump up and you're in the middle of a dream landscape, but
I
it
do
can be
that.
done, and it's it takes the pressure off too. If you just think about every day, what's the purpose of that day, or what's, the life you want to be living? How do you want to
Mhm.
feel? How do you want to act? Who do you want to talk to? It's only a day. And then those just stack.
Yeah. mm, Very early on, one of my teachers gave me a book that it took me a while to finish reading. It was the Tibetan Book of Dead. And the whole concept of it is to essentially learn to live life like you're dying and to have death as an ally in your life. And that book really flipped it for me because we can actually die. Like I could go across the street and die. And we tend to think about death as something that happens to other people, not to us. Like death doesn't happen to the people I love or to, and so from reading that book, John DePolito is my teacher, is a beautiful artist and my one of my dear mentors as an actor. He really the book really helped me to be in such good relationship to the people in my life, to say I love you, to close all my loops, to not keep loops open, right? Like no energetic debt allowed, because I to live life as you're dying could sound very morbid. But it also is the thing that makes you come alive. There's so many stories about people that know they know when their last day is coming. They're going through an illness or something, and those years just become like, wow, the years of full aliveness because they know they're dying. And so the gift of walking with our death on by our side, not as something scary, but like just making this moment richer, to make it more alive, to make it more precious, to bring more beauty into our actions, into the way that we are communicating, into the pristine energy that we get to choose to enact, the truthfulness in our words, because we could be dying, right? Like that is a fact. People die. What is the role? As I'm speaking about of this, and I'm thinking, looking at you, and seeing this beautiful painting behind you. One of the reasons why I think the studio is such a beautiful way for place for us to meet is there's so much beauty, right? And it's like, and I really feel that art is a way of stating like I exist and I am here, and and a beauty plays a huge role in my life and the way I live. I walk a beauty way through the shamanic path that I walk, and I'm curious about what is the role that beauty plays in your life.
It's foundational. I think that, if given the choice, why would you not live in a beautiful world? Why would
Mhm.
you not want more trees and green around you? Why would you not want, animals and, people and colors and vibrance, architectural buildings? Why not make them look good? Why does it have to be a concrete box? You wasted an opportunity. And I think that everybody, has their own concept, idea as to what that is. And when we talk to folks about art, or I tell them what to buy if they're starting their collecting journey, it's buy whatever you like. What makes you come alive, what resonates with you, because somebody that has all of that energy around them that makes them more themselves, they become lighter, they become brighter, and that's more beautiful. And I think that, yeah, beauty is a way to come alive.
Mm. Yes. Thank you, Dave. If you could leave people with one invitation, what would it be?
The invitation would just be to smile more, laugh more, and take things less seriously.
Yeah, I love it. Where can people find you?
Instagram, just at daveross.art is the easiest. And hope you have an awesome, awesome day.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. If this conversation stirred something in you, please subscribe to this podcast. If you'd like to be connected with the Up Games, please let me know. They do amazing experiences throughout the world, exploring ways to living in a good connection with the planet, living regeneratively and creatively. And yeah, science, stay connected and come to one of our Art of Being Human salons if you're in Miami locally. Sending you my love. Talk to you soon.